So it's Christmas in the Premier League, and this is a point where the table starts telling the truth. Fans are asking serious questions, not for vibes anymore, because they want answers as to why and how their teams are performing the way in which they are, and how their teams would perform by the end of the season. So today we are doing the top 10 hottest EPL questions everyone is arguing about. If you look at the Twitter trends, if you look at the sport pundits, the shows, everyone is talking about one of these top 10 questions that we've sampled. And so what we're going to do is to pick it from the top or the least controversial, which is the 10th one, all the way down to the first. And I'm sure number one is the one that everybody is waiting for. So as always, with me here on this episode is Erasmus. What we're going to do is to look at all these questions. Some of them are quite tough. I'm waiting to hear Erasmus's take on them. We'll try and not dwell on one question too long so that we have enough time for all the questions that we have. So, Erasmus, are you ready? Because these questions, for me, I'm ready to set the traps so that if you fall in them, the agenda boys will take you on.
Yeah, I'm certainly ready. I'm looking forward to them.
Awesome. So let's start with the 10th question. Fans keep asking, will anything actually happen to Manchester City when it comes to their 115 charges saga? Or is it just noise that drags on forever? And if a verdict drops, does it actually rewrite titles, points, transfers, or anything that would that Manchester City has achieved within this period? So the question I have for Erasmus is, do you think this ends with real consequences or a long, quiet fade out, like it seems to be the case of what is going on now?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question because for something that is not performance related, it has generated a lot of interest within football media. Also because
Yeah.
of the implication of those charges, right? Like if they are actually found guilty, the implications being points deductions, title withdrawals. I think it's quite unprecedented. We've not seen it, especially at the scale at which it has been described. I personally think it is sitting within the realm of those things that almost remains like a conspiracy theory that we wouldn't know how to answer, because I think that a verdict on each side, whether as guilty or not guilty, would have such a
Yeah.
huge impact on the future of the game, to the extent that I think that there are too many interested parties that might be interested in sort of keeping a hold on this information or keeping a tight lid on it for a while. But I think if Manchester City is found guilty, it would rewrite how we look at sports right now, especially with the huge financialization. But then also, I think if Man City manages to get away with this, it might have huge implications for how the sport is run in the long term, and which I don't think we can imagine what that would look like in the future.
So ultimately, regardless of how this goes, it changes the sport,
It
whether
changes the
for
sport.
good or for bad. Interesting. And I think this is like a cloud that's hanging over the EPL. Everyone, I think people have just gotten tired of waiting. And so people have just stopped waiting. And that was, I think, it's also one of the reasons why it's in 10th. It's like a cloud hanging over the league. It's important, but people are just tired of waiting at this point. And let's
Yeah.
see, regardless of what happens, Erasmus says this will change the course of the league. Now, question number 9 is quite interesting because people sort of want to know which big club is sleepwalking into danger in the EPL. So, who is your big club that's heading into trouble?
For me, it's West Ham. If you take a look at the standings at the moment, they sit in 18th
Yeah,
with 18 games played, just 13 points accumulated. And I choose West Ham because it's a London club, first of all, and
yeah,
it's quite a historic club. And even if you look at their modern history, with David Moyes 2, 3 seasons ago, where they won the UEFA Conference League, which sort of
yeah,
marked the era of the relatively quieter clubs in England beginning to also
Yeah,
dominate Europe. But I think the trajectory on which they are on, they are sleepwalking to danger because the club in 17th is Forest, who are 5 points adrift. And the way in which
yeah,
Forest are improving now, it is less likely that they drop too many points going ahead. And if you look at Leeds, Bournemouth we know is having a very bad time, but you wouldn't expect that it gets to relegation level. Leeds seem to be getting stronger and stronger quite by the day. So I think maybe the only competition there is Leeds to drop points, hopefully, but
yeah.
18 games more than halfway into the season, I think they are setting themselves up for a very, very dramatic finish.
Do you think it's possible for them to turn it around? Because obviously they are there because it seems like they started the season poorly. Everybody said this is a blip. This is West Ham. They won a European trophy not long ago, just before Declan Rice went to Arsenal. And this is a team that was started to or expected to build on that. Now it seems to be much more permanent to this struggle. Do we see a world where West Ham actually doesn't recover from this?
Yeah, I think it's very possible. First of all, because of the competitiveness of the league right now,
Yeah,
um, all the teams have equal strength, and you can see it in the way in which the results are swinging and teams are swinging up and down the table. I think there's a bit of
yeah,
crystallization happening at the top, but within the middle section and even close to the bottom, you can still quite see that it is choked. But secondly, because the usual suspects, who are the newly promoted sides, are not just exceeding expectations. They are not just matching expectations. They are rather exceeding expectations by a very wide
yeah,
margin. You have clubs like Sunderland who are sitting in the top 10 end of the table. Clubs that we
yeah.
expected to also struggle, like Brentford and even Burnley, are being quite resilient. So I think
Even
West Ham's,
Everton.
yeah, even Everton, I would argue, is on a different scale. Maybe it's a club that would say because of the new stadium and everything, they were sort of on the
Yeah.
trajectory going into trying to get into Europe. But I think with the results from some of these clubs, West Ham's strategy of banking on being better than maybe two of the newly promoted teams and hope Wolves joins them might just backfire. And I think it all depends on the fighting spirit of Burnley and Leeds at this point.
Interesting. Let's look at question number 8. And it's much more transfer related. I know the January transfer window is not the biggest transfer window, so people don't hear big news there. But what's the one January signing that might flip the season? We've heard of Antoine Semenyo choosing Manchester City over other competitors like United, Chelsea, which is your club. But I mean, he's a very, very talented footballer with the kind of impact he's having in Bournemouth this season. Do you think having that kind of player, for instance, switches the flips the switch between Arsenal and City when the going gets tough?
Yeah, I think you are spot on with identifying their transfer targets. And I think there are a couple of implications here. First, obviously
Yeah,
for City in terms of bolstering the attacking options. I wouldn't say City's problem has been offensive. We all know that it's been more of defensive in the way in which the ship goes. But I think that they've hedged
yeah,
against that threat, bringing in Donnarumma, and I think Guardiola adapting the play a little bit and putting more bodies in the midfield, and like Nico Gonzalez also maturing into the game. You have Rodri, who's also fit
yeah,
now on the bench, so I think it would improve. I think in the attack, although they were doing well, the threat was that the goals were coming from one person, and which is Erling Haaland, which means that when he's out, they really do not have an options to produce goals. At least someone who is
yeah,
consistent with that. We've seen Foden step up, which is all good. But as they go deeper into the competitions, like Champions League, they will be expected to do well over there, and it's
yeah,
getting to January and the new year. Where you have games back to back, right? You need to be delivering on all fronts quite consistently. And we've seen Antoine Semenyo for
yeah,
that he's someone who delivers in the Premier League. And therefore, it's not going to take a lot of time to adapt. He can come in and immediately add more goals, more variety, more energy, more firepower to Man City, and can move them closer to Arsenal or even surpass Arsenal. The second
Yeah.
influence, though, is down the table because at the moment, Bournemouth sits at 15th. They've not won in their
Yeah.
last 12 games. And their issues have been defensive, but more so offensive because they are not, even though they are scoring goals, they are still not creating as many chances as they would
Yeah.
want to. So I think losing a huge player like Semenyo, who is currently their leading goal scorer, might affect
Yeah.
that attacking output, which means that they can no longer overcome the defensive flaws by outscoring opponents anymore. And I think they might bring themselves dangerously close to the conversations around relegation too.
Interesting. It's funny how football changes. When Bournemouth was around third or fourth, everybody said Ariola is the best manager in the world. Now they sit 15th, and Ariola is no more the best manager in the world. Sad
Yeah,
over a few weeks.
he himself called it. He himself called it. He mentioned when they were being hyped that like this is the
Yeah.
job. Like tomorrow, if he loses games, he'll be called on. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Question number 7 is back to the bottling company in the Premier League. Do they need a new striker to win the title? And ultimately saying, does Arsenal's current attack meet the requirements of title winners? Because we've seen them bring in Victor Gyökeres, but he's not hit the ground running. Sure, maybe against the little teams around, he might knock a goal in there. But in terms of the big games, he's not been able to show up. And it seems like Arsenal's attack is still not that fearful or feared across the Premier League.
so for me, like it's very interesting to talk about Arsenal and to talk about Victor Gyökeres. Um,
Yeah,
I think when we had previous discussions, I've always pointed out that Arsenal's problem is not material, it's more psychological than material. If you think about all
yeah,
of the instances and situations they've been over the years, it doesn't seem like it's just a. I know the injuries have been a huge factor, but it does seem like the conversations around the club, fans' expectations, and all of that
yeah,
seems to play a huge role in the way in which they perform and they do well. When we had, I remember when we first had that striker conversation, I mentioned it clearly that I don't think it's a striker problem because Arteta's system is built not to have those strikers, but to have a level of
yeah,
fluidity and create chances from many angles and score goals. They were doing fine. It was a problem of the squad and the expectations that people had put on them. And I think they
yeah,
solved the squad question, and that is what is, and they solve both of the problems, like the real issue, which was the squad, and then the second issue which people thought, which was the striker. And we've seen time and time again that they are being bailed out by the squad. Superior performances put in by players like Eze, who is coming on when Odegaard was hurt, where Madueke, who is on when Saka is hurt, and the level at which they've been able to keep their consistency and the firepower going. They lost Gabriel and Saliba. They never missed them because they had replacements. And previously, that was Arsenal's problem. They'll be doing very well. Then they lose a defender, and Rob Holding has to come in for a few games. Then they are shaky. They
yeah,
concede a few goals. Then the entire psychology of the club goes down. So I feel like the striker problem was a placebo thing. So we quite clearly see that the striker hasn't taken off ground, but they are still doing well. But secondly,
yeah,
I think that the reason why that wasn't the answer was because of the bar of expectation they had set for the striker in this instance. They wanted, listen to who they wanted. They wanted a nine who can come in and score 20 goals a season. It, there's not a lot of players who can do that. I'm not saying they are Dululu. I'm not saying there's Dululu because I know the
of
Arsenal
course,
fan
you are
base,
me.
but there's not a lot of players who can come in and do that. And I don't think that was
Yeah,
Victor. And you could see it in the hesitation they had all summer. They had the chance to sign him. They kept pulling back till it was quite clear they weren't getting all the Sescos, all of the other targets which they wanted. And you can see why they wanted Sesco, not in the fact that he was better, but that it was more of a long-term prospect. It was an
yeah,
option of this is a prospect you can groom to become a good part of the squad and Arsenal within the attack instead of someone that
Yeah,
you think you can just offload the burden and like. I remember Arteta saying that with the first time he saw Gyökeres, he was like he knew it because he was there. He was ready to take on the challenge. That challenge is too huge. You don't give it to a lot of players, and even if they are, no matter how good they are, it can always backfire. And I think Gyökeres might
yeah.
go on to score some good goals and be a good player for the club, but let it be on record that he's not that striker that had to come in to save us now.
But I mean, Jokic scored about what he was one of the highest scoring players in Europe last season. I think aside Kylian Mbappe, he had the most goals in Europe. If you think about it, also, my problem with Arsenal and the introduction of Gyökeres is this is a thing we said about Pep Guardiola when he played with a false nine for so long and he was going to buy Haaland. And our question was, would he be able to integrate Haaland into a team that is used to always cutting in instead of putting in crosses, always trying having wingers who are goal scorers instead of creators? And we saw Pep Guardiola being able to unlock Haaland with Kevin De Bruyne. And anytime Kevin didn't play, you saw Haaland suffer because he wasn't getting the same kind of service with the wingers in that system. You have a team that is built on Gabriel, what do you call it? Martinelli, who is just, I don't know, a speedy horse who wants to, I don't sometimes attempt to go. And then you have Saka, who's always used to always cut in and shoot because he wants to be the main man at Arsenal. Nobody's putting in those crosses across. Maybe Eze is the one who will try and do those things, or Madueke, who would even try to score because he also wants to establish himself around the competition. And given that these are all attackers who are are like at the very ultimate, evaluated on their goal scoring output, they are all sort of trained to try and get the goals instead of create for your crush to get the goals. And probably that's what Arteta needs to fix. He also needs to fix the profile of players he plays alongside the strikers in order to get the best out of them.
I just want to point out that we all the reason why
Yeah,
we were having that conversation about Pep in the first place was because we all know hard how hard it is for Pep to change his mind or to change his system.
yeah,
He's quite a fanatic with the way he wants to play. So it had to take something special for him to want to change the system to adapt to one player. Pep
yeah,
never does that. He did it for the only
yeah.
player he did it for was Messi,
Messi.
probably.
Yeah,
Yes. So it tells you a lot about the talent, which is Haaland.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I have a feeling that in comparison with Gyökeres, you don't get that sense. Like, I mean, why would Arteta change a way that has been working for him and it's even working till now
yes,
for a player just to feed his ego, to make him feel like, no, the team is winning. Maybe are they playing excellently? Are they getting smashing results? No, but the team is winning. So he would
yeah,
expect that Gyökeres would tap in and contributes his part that when he's called upon, he can come
yeah,
in there and score the goals. But I don't think anyone will change the system for him. And I don't think that was the promise when he came in. So he would have to insert himself into games. He would have to make himself the big guy. You remember Gabriel Jesus when he came in there?
yeah,
He was scoring the goals even before they changed the system or anything. He was doing the
yeah,
job that he came in there to do. And you need to impose yourself. And like I said, that was the kind of striker that they thought they were getting. Someone who come in there, slot in and score 20 goals a season. And like I said, Gyökeres is not a bad striker, but that's an expectation that you don't just put on anyone's shoulders. For me, this is
yeah,
like Ronaldo, Messi stuff. Like you can do that to
yeah,
the Ronaldos, the Hazards, the Neymars. Not
yeah.
every player can take that.
Interesting. Let's go to question number 6. And as the questions are getting to the top, it's getting much more spicy, and I'm loving it because the shade and the agenda will start popping up very soon. Question number 6 is an Arteta versus Maresca comparison as to who is actually a better manager and a better builder. Obviously, we know Arteta has been building since he's been building. Even Noah took less time to build the ark,
Oh, Noah.
but Arteta has been building. Arteta has been building since God knows how long. And then we have Maresca, who has come in and he's been able to take a team to finish, a team of very, very young prospects, by the way. He's been able to take them to finish top four in the EPL. He's been able to win the Conference League. He's also been able to win the Club World Cup. And I think a lot of us even forget that this is Maresca's second full season at the club. The fact that we see his imprint on the club so much that we sort of think he's probably been there as long as the builder has been at Arsenal. But the question still remains: who is the better manager? Because I think fans went on social media to have this debate recently. And what do you think, Erasmus?
It's a very difficult question, obviously, because I'm a Chelsea fan and I love Enzo Maresca so much. But also, I'm
Yeah.
someone who, I've always been in Arteta's corner anytime people speak against
Yes.
him or challenge.
Anytime I speak against him, so you
Yes.
go ahead.
So I don't think there is a straightforward answer. I don't think that's how football works in terms of just being able to compare them. But I do think that the work
Yeah.
that both of them have done is phenomenal. Like if you look at what Arteta did, you'd say comparatively he didn't have a lot of money to spend or to start with. You look
Yes.
at the materials that he had, even though he spent the most amount of money between him and Enzo Maresca, you'd
Yeah.
see that his ability to unlock players like Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, Saliba, who are forming the core of his squad. These are players that they didn't bring them in for big money; they were from the academy. You would say that's a huge credit to him. If you
Mm.
also look at Enzo Maresca, these were players who were there. They had potential. Everyone waxed lyrical about them from the various clubs they came from. But
Yeah.
over previous seasons, it's just not clicked. And how he was able to bring them together to click um, and to get them winning titles is wonderful. And I think the Chelsea project is going to grow. I think it's going to get bigger than this. Although, like,
Yeah.
I'm beginning to have issues with Maresca. Like ideologically, I'm beginning to reflect on some opinions. I don't think I'm quite deepened in that yet. The first is
Yeah.
the question around the experience of Maresca. Even though it's just his second season in charge of top flight football and only his third year in professional coaching. He's been around the block for a very, very long time. He's someone who's worked
Yeah.
with Pellegrini, worked with Pep Guardiola, worked with a lot of good coaches, worked with Ancelotti, worked with a lot of good coaches. He's worked across different clubs in Spain, Italy, and also in England. So he's experienced a lot of seasons. He's experienced decisions being made on the fly. And
Yeah.
you look at some of the things which he's doing now, and there are things which are super impressive, but there are things also which are super naive. And I think that
Yeah.
at the top level of coaching, you need to reduce the number of naive decisions that you make. Like you will not have a lot of room to be able to make very good decisions. You will not have the freedom to be able
Yeah.
to make good decisions all the time, and you need to make calls
Yeah.
quite on the split of the moment. So you need to eliminate the ones where you can easily not make that mistake. And I'm not sure
Yeah.
whether it's a question of the Chelsea's project and strategy, which is influencing how he coaches in the first place, which is the only plausible explanation. But some of the decisions that he's making with squad selection, season planning, in-game management, some of them is just like questionable. But you would always say these are evidence of a coach who is still learning, that they will learn and they will improve with the
Yeah.
team. But I'm beginning to feel like they are quite systematic. They are part of who he is, and it's not
Yeah.
just a question of naivety. So
I feel
that's
like
my
you should pay me at this point because this one you've used it as a therapy option for your Chelsea run instead of answering
yes,
my question. So
yes.
when we are done, this session is I don't know £50. Quick, then we move on.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I mean, because this is because I know what the criticism of Arteta has been, that he needs to win trophies, and
Yeah.
it looks like Maresca
Yeah.
has come and he's won trophies. But
So are
I'm
you picking Arteta over Maresca?
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to also point the light to the fact that with
Yeah, we're
Maresca,
also trying to point out what you are picking. So who are you picking?
yeah, there are cobwebs in there. I already said from the start that it's very hard to compare. But for me, I think the fact that Maresca
Yes.
has come in and won some important trophies especially in
Mhm.
this very short time, is evidence of just how quick he's able to put things together. But I think he will need to get Chelsea to a point where they are competing for titles and actually win for me to actually say, okay, overwhelmingly now you are better than Arteta.
So you are saying Maresca is better than Arteta, just that you are not
I,
going
I,
to pick him every day of the week.
I like I said, I think that Maresca needs to do a lot more for me to be able to say that okay, he's definitely beyond the stretch with Arteta.
This political answer, like, we won't take it, but it's fine. I'll give my own answer. I know that people would say that Arteta took over a West team, but 5 years, come on. That West team, he started building his own after year one. Secondly, I know people would say Maresca is making naive decisions. Yes, in Arteta's second season, he was also making naive decisions. The only thing is that Maresca, in his naivety, won his trophies. Arteta, in his naivety, didn't win trophies. He kept doing, we are building, and it's a long process, and it's a process. Bro, the process is up. The 5 years process, the process right now, we are done with the process. Give us the outcome. We can't be processing for 5 years. For me, based on, because everything we say in this world is about outcomes. Ultimately, your process is validated by your outcome. Your philosophy, your light bulb and connect, and we have to connect, is all validated by the outcome. If Arteta, his connections and his light bulbs are not winning the trophies, I think he's a brilliant manager. I do not think at this point he's better than Maresca. Anyway,
Fair
and
point.
people who say it's my Arteta hate. Fine.
Of course it
We
is.
can argue. They can go and hug a transformer. I'm not I'm familiar. Anyway, question number 5. Is this league and this season officially a three-horse race? Because we see Aston Villa, we see Manchester City, and we see the butlers of the league, Arsenal.
No, I think it's still a two-horse race between Arsenal and Man City, and we'll find out very soon. I mean, I don't say it because Aston Villa beat us. I almost saw that result coming in the sense of the
Mhm.
narrative that it makes of it being a three-horse race. The game was
Yeah,
extra difficult on that level. It was quite clear
yeah,
that Chelsea was the better side within the game, but the
yeah,
I think the hunger that Aston Villa showed was just incredible. But the first half and the first 60 minutes showed me that compared to the top sides, they would not be able to dominate games. They are prepared to play and hit teams on the counter. And I think that there's a lot of teams right now in the league who can solve that problem. Against the smaller teams, they still don't have answer for the low blocks. They have relied on shots
yeah,
outside the box, which is helping them very well. And obviously, they have a very good unit, um, and they are competing in Europe, but the squad is also not too big that you can almost replace quality for quality every time. And remember that
yeah,
they played very well during preseason. They struggled in the first 5 or 6 games. Then they've gone ahead to
yeah,
win 11 games on the trot. You are not going to in
yeah,
this Premier League. You are not going to win all the games. There's a point at which you might drop form. And my feeling is that Arsenal and Man City know how to sustain those levels. Aston Villa may not be able to, but I think they have a run of games which allows them to do those things. Like they play Arsenal next. I think they play Man City also soon. So
they
it's
play they play
momentum.
Arsenal. They play Arsenal, Bournemouth, and Liverpool as their next 3 games.
Yeah, I think it sort of gives you the momentum, but these run of games, it just takes you losing one for you to like lose two, draw one, and then before you realize, because it does feel like a lot of what they are on is from winning the games and
Yeah,
sort of like the momentum rather than, oh, they are playing a style of play that I think like the way Leicester City was playing,
sustainable.
it's like Leicester
Yeah,
like you or not, but they are playing amazing football. That's not to say Aston Villa is not playing good football, but I think what the first 60 minutes against Chelsea showed me is that when a team turns up, they can dominate them, but they are riding a lot on the confidence that these wins are bringing. And when you enter into the mud and in
yeah.
a stretch where this confidence is not on the very high, would you be able to sustain those level of performances? I doubt.
Fair enough. But I mean, somebody would say they have the best or the most prolific number 10 in world football now in Morgan Rogers. He's giving Jude Bellingham a run for his money in the England squad. And clearly, I think a lot of us are quickly realizing while Thomas Tuchel said he sometimes picks Rogers over Bellingham. And everybody was going nuts. Everybody said, oh, how can Bellingham be benched for England? And now everybody's saying, at this point, I won't be shocked if Rogers starts ahead of Bellingham. It
Mm.
takes somebody to do some wonders, and then everybody abandon you. Jude, don't worry, okay, I'm behind you. I'm just an anti-Rogers person. But anyway, let's talk about the fourth question. Will Manchester City do the usual second half takeover?
I watched their last game against Nottingham Forest, and it felt like it.
Yeah,
Usually it's quite hard to contain the excitement. Like Pep Guardiola has been trying to play it down, but you are beginning to
yeah,
see that within the squad there is a huge belief amongst them growing that they
yeah,
can take on this Arsenal side. And
yeah,
you they are starting the usual things again: late goals, turning up in games, players turning up. And I think with signing of Semenyo, they're going to keep that attacking threat on. Not that I don't think they may lose some games. I think that
yeah,
they will not go on that, that 14, 15 game run. But you say it and then all of a sudden they are doing it. But this Man City team is good enough to do that. And I think all they
yeah,
need is sort of like that emotional balance, not to go too high. And Pep Guardiola, I can
yeah,
see is trying so hard to always play down the expectations. But I think there will be a point at
yeah,
which they need to carry those expectations. They need to carry that experience. I feel
yeah,
they might get more disappointed with the Champions League. I think
yeah,
one-on-one knockouts, it may show, like some of the character of the players may
yeah,
feel to show in those moments. But I think that's the way in which Arsenal are going. Arsenal looks vulnerable sometimes, and it just takes them losing a few games and Man City to build confidence, and they can try and stretch it within the league.
For me, I think Arsenal is going to capitulate if they lose a game. And the thing is that like you said, I think the last time we spoke about this, Arsenal are built on this idea that they have to be absolutely perfect. And that's why against Aston Villa, when they lost that last minute goal, they were so frustrated and it was very visible as if their world were coming to an end, even though they are still league leaders and they were top of the table. Now, their next three games is against Aston Villa again, against Bournemouth, and against Liverpool. If Arsenal should drop points in any of these games and City should win that game of the week, Arsenal are second on the table, and that sight, that table switch, that slip,
You think it might?
that's all. I think it messes up with them, right? And that's why they are carrying so much undue pressure. You see, you were talking about Pep Guardiola being able to manage the emotions of the team. And I think he's managing the emotions of the team because they are second place, because they are the ones chasing the title contenders. Once they take over, they would own up to that responsibility and they
Mm.
would march on and build. So he's able to determine when to lock up the team's emotions and when to let them out so that they can be able to get the best out of the positions that they are in. What Arteta is doing with his team now and still not owning up to, yeah, we are here, we are dominating. It's more like the everyday, yeah, we are doing our best. It's a process and the league is so hard. At some point, you need to be able to arrive and say, look, even if we drop, we don't have to be on top every single week to win. Even if we drop, we can be second place in seven successive weeks. And all that matters is that on that very last day, we are top of the table. And that kind of mentality, I do not think is within the Arsenal squad now. They feel like they have to be unbeatable and perfect moving on. And that's how everybody also speaks about them. So if you realize, everybody says Arsenal is there, but City is chasing. And if City overtakes them, that's it. Nobody gives Arsenal a second chance if City overtakes them. But if it was the other way around and Arsenal overtook City in the middle of the season, everybody would say it's City. They will come back, right? So I
Mm.
just have a feeling that City knows how to manage depending on where they are. Arsenal sort of can only manage themselves with that level of confidence if they are top of the table.
No, I think that's a really fair point. Like, to be honest, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be an interesting end to the season.
Media, the game I'm looking forward is the 30th December Arsenal Aston Villa clash, the second leg. Oh my God. If Arsenal lose and City win, hey, you people, I've told you the day Arsenal goes second and I take a screenshot, block me, block, block me. That would be the start of your of your Premier League prediction. The downside of it, block me here. Anyway, the third question, I think we've sort of answered it a little bit, but it's whether or not Aston Villa are a real title contender or they're just on a hot run. And I think your position on it is to say that they are sort of on a hot run based on the wins and the energy that comes from these wins, right? But I think the reason why people tend to have a little bit more trust when it comes to Aston Villa staying in there is Unai Emery, with the experience that he has, with the constant progress and improvement that he's shown with this Aston Villa team. We saw where they were when he came to take them. We saw how much he's improved them. And we've seen that he's a coach with experience that is able to get his teams going. And whether it's a hot run or not, they are getting the 3 points, right? They would rather get the 3 points on a hot run than not. So they have it. And the question you're asking is, are they real title contenders? And mind you, this is a team, like you're saying, that is taking a lot of points from the top end of the table, teams on from other teams on the top end of the table. So even if they are not real title contenders, they are sort of the boogie team that's deciding who becomes the title holder or the actual title race teams. And sort of because of doing that alone, it places them somewhere up there. And currently they are just 3 points behind Arsenal and 1 point behind Man City.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a world in which it becomes a three-horse race. Don't get me wrong. There's
Yeah,
absolutely a world it becomes that. You go on, you beat Arsenal, and then
yeah,
you are much, much closer to the conversation. And remember that they are 10 points ahead of Chelsea and ahead of
yeah,
Liverpool, who sits both in fourth and fifth. So even if they
yeah.
drop a few points here and there, they are
They
still
are
much
still
closer to the
comfortable.
top two than the top four. But I feel like there's a world in which Aston Villa knows that they still need to compete in Europe. They are okay with a
Yeah,
return to the Champions League. And it's about
yeah,
whether at that last minute do you think a top we've seen it with every three horse race. You remember two, three
yeah,
seasons ago, no, 2 seasons ago when it was Liverpool, City, Arsenal, and
yeah,
Liverpool went, and then like 6 weeks or so to the title, they lost
yeah,
a run of games, and it was because they were struggling to compete in Europe, struggling to keep up with the number of games in that manner. I think
yeah,
that's the likely scenario to break out. But I think if they manage to continue to stay close, and we anticipate the inconsistency of Arsenal and we see the inexperience of City show up and they are still in and around, I think they may push very hard. And once you leave it close to the last couple of weeks, anything can surprise you. Anything can decide, I'll
yeah,
show up in these last 5 games, stay consistent.
yeah.
And that sometimes wins you the league. We saw it with how
Yeah.
Leicester City did it.
Interesting. Well, two final questions, and obviously these are a lot more slightly more difficult and hot ones to answer. But the first one is, has Arsenal started sleeping? And that's question number two. Obviously, because currently Arsenal, like I said, it's 2 points away from Manchester City, 3 points away from Aston Villa. They faced Aston Villa next, who've already beaten them before. They're on a good run of form. They feel like they could go there and still beat Arsenal. Arsenal also knowing that this is a team that can suffer and pull up such surprises like they did to them in their earlier meeting, would sort of be a little bit cautious as to how they approach this game. And I have a feeling might take it to be too much of pressure to beat Aston Villa than they probably should have ordinarily if things were going the way you expected, that Arsenal would be dominating and Aston Villa might not, right? So you sort of end up with a situation where by the next end of the next 3 games, I think, and my prediction is by the end of the next 3 games, Arsenal will be second on the table, and Man City will probably be first, right? And that's it's sort of how I view this sleeping thing. So, what do you think? Do you think Arsenal is actually sleeping as leaders of the table?
No, I don't think so. Like last season, we saw that Liverpool by Christmas were like, I think, 8 points or 10 points adrift, and then they ran away with the league. But beyond that,
Yeah,
it's always been around this. Like when, uh, to be fair, Arsenal has always been at the top at Christmas, and they have
yeah, that's my point. Arsenal has been every Christmas that Arsenal has been on top of the table, they've lost.
they've lost it. So, but my theory is that they are showing the signs of a team that can win the league. Like games where they could easily be losing, or games where they are not performing, they are coming out still with the results.
I have a
And
quick question for you here.
yeah,
Like, how are the signs any different from the signs they showed us 3 seasons ago and 2 seasons ago? Because the thing is that Arsenal 3 seasons ago and 2 seasons ago were top of the table at Christmas with Arteta in charge. They were the exciting team or the more experienced team. Liverpool, all it took was one exceptional performance. And in those 2 seasons that Arsenal failed to win the league, it's because they spent the most days on top of the league, but the day that it mattered the most, they were not on top of the league. So
yeah,
for
and
me,
and
staying on top of the league is not enough evidence for me at this point.
no, no, I agree. Like I don't think it's dependent on them staying on top of the league, but when I look at this Aston Villa game that they have coming up, I know it's a
Yeah,
very difficult game, but they look like the favorites to win it. I know Aston Villa give them a tough time when they played at the Villa Stadium, but it also gives
yeah,
Arsenal a lot of reason to turn up in the game. Also, they are playing at the Emirates. Also, Aston Villa is going into the clash with a couple of suspensions and like really, really, really tough run of games, especially with the one they played against Chelsea. But I think
yeah,
Unai Emery has the ingredients to pull out a surprise and stand Arsenal. But I think that Arsenal now has the squad. Like within this
yeah,
period, it was that one injury. It was that one bad result. But I think now they have the squad to step in
yeah.
those gaps. That's why I think they ride it through. But I don't think that uh, they are safe at all just because of where they are now. I just think that they will win more games than what they did. Then they will be able. They will stay stronger in some of the more challenging games too.
Interesting. Arsenal are not safe as leaders of the league. Erasmus Segbefia 2025. I'm looking for quotes for when the agenda starts. But let's look at the final question. I think your answer sort of gives a very, very good segue into the final question, which is the number one question that every single EPL fan has been asking. If you look at the Reddit threads, if you look at the Twitter threads, if you go to Facebook where the old guys discuss their football, if you go into YouTube comment sections on Christmas episodes of various sports shows, what you find the number one difficult and the most difficult question for football fans, which I'm going to put to you now, is who wins the league from here? Erasmus.
I still have my money on Arsenal, but
You
like
don't
I
like
said,
your money.
yeah, I don't like
You
my
don't
money.
like your money.
I still have my money on Arsenal, but I must say it is more influenced by my earlier prediction. I don't think they've given me a lot of
Yeah,
reasons to flip flop.
yeah,
No, sorry, they have given me reasons to doubt that they will sustain it to
yeah,
the end of the season, but there's not been another team that has given me an overwhelming reason that it will be them. So I think Arsenal still has
okay,
issues. I think their issues may be more psychological, but I think that they have reason to overcome that if it's not tangible injuries and things like that. But no other team, maybe apart from City, but City still look a bit fragile. Aston Villa also doesn't give
yeah,
me the feature of a team that would blow it away. And obviously, the rest, it's quite clear that they are not serious, especially Liverpool and Chelsea. So I don't think there's been a strong alternative for me to pivot from. And I know Man City is obviously the clear But they are still not the Man City of old. So I'm not sure what to expect from them.
That's true. They are the Man City of new, and that's why I was saying for them. Guardiola, la 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 la. Guardiola, la 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 la.
We
The
are
thing that
biased.
made the Man City of old was Pep Guardiola. He's still there. And you are saying they are not the Man City of Guardiola, la 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 la. This is the song of champions. The song will be singing on the City Bus tour in Manchester. When the league ends and it's a blue letter day in England. You people, just wait. Pep Guardiola is coming. For me, because I like my money. My money is on Manchester City,
Go
not
for it.
the fraudulent coach from South London who wears red with his team, and no, not London, yes, who wears red with his team, and then they will go and do wagadre, give everybody's hopes up, and then bottling company just starts producing bottles in England during the end of the season. We'll be here.
I'll be here
We'll be
for
here.
you.
Me, I've told you, after the next 3 games, I'll take a screenshot of the table and come back. By that time, it will be around 7th January. Good. The first episode, the second episode of the Shaft Sports 2026 will be the table proving me wrong. Mark my words. Anyway, I mean, this has been a list of very interesting questions, I might say. I think when we're prepping this episode and trying to look at what are the trending issues that people are talking about, if you look at the fact that the city charges thing where there was like, wait, people are still talking about this, but yeah, people were, and all the way to whether or not Arteta can win the league. I mean, people are asking that question because they know he can't win the league, but let's all pretend that he can win it and let's wait and see. Thanks everyone for listening to this episode. And obviously, as 2026 goes along, we'll be reviewing some of these questions. They would eventually become hot topics down the line. For instance, if the city charges, we get much more concrete rulings on them. You'd get better deep dives on the Shaft Sports as always. If you Arteta's fraudulent, I don't know, pretends to win, yeah, you get deep dives here. Maresca's better performance over Arteta, you get deep dives here. Aston Villa showing Arteta that it wasn't some random flick of a last minute goal. You get all the deep dives here. So subscribe, leave your thoughts, leave your comments, but also let us know in the comment section. Beyond all these, what do you think will be the defining questions of 2026 and the hottest questions from a fan perspective? See you on the next episode.
Goodbye.